Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is Friday, March 8th, and I hope you guys had a good week, and hopefully we can end the week on a good note. What I want to do today is walk you guys through the macro data releases for today, and then since I have some time today, I'll actually walk you guys through my whole entire process. I put on some options trades on some of the miners this morning, so I'll walk you guys through my whole entire process, show you what I do and how I do this all in Robinhood as well too. So let's dive into it. So for today, we had some major releases today on the macro front. So on the 8th here, we had at 8:30, we had non-farms payroll, and the number was 275,000 people versus the forecasted of 200,000 and the prior of 229,000. We'll take a little bit deeper dive into this, but non-farms payroll is essentially just anybody on a payroll. It excludes a couple of employees like government employees, farmers, and then entrepreneurs and people who are proprietors or sole proprietors as well too. So anybody you can think of in a major company collecting a paycheck on a W-2, that's what these non-farm payrolls. I think it's important just because you get to see how many people are added and subtracted on the trend, and you can look at a trend basis how kind of the job market is looking. The second number that was released today was the unemployment rate for the US. We actually hit 3.9%, which was a tick higher than the 3.7% forecasted and the 3.7% on the month prior to that. So let's dive into the more specifics of the charts. Okay, so I use Real Vision. They have a really good macro dashboard for all the data. They have an overview of all the data. They have GDP, prices, business, labor, Fed and money, and then housing and the consumer. It just kind of puts everything all together, all the data from TradingView and all the data from the Fed and the data that they've released. So just a really good dashboard as well too. And Real Vision has done such a good job at educating me and then also having these tools available on the website. So looking at the the first number was non-farms payroll. If we zoom into it a little bit more, as I always mentioned, it's always really good to look at the trend rather than any single data point. So here we have this month's number at 275,000. We have been on a decline since 2022 into 2023. Right now it looks like we're upticking, and it means that more people are signing on for jobs and getting payroll numbers. Again, I think this trend, no major differences to this, but typically, the market does react to some of these releases in different ways. But I think looking at this non-farm payrolls number, it looks, it's kind of on trend and hasn't really broken out, indicating that, a lot of people are getting jobs. So I think that's probably good. If too many people are getting jobs and there's more payrolls, it just means that it's just making the Fed's life a little bit more difficult on the inflation and the wage inflation front. And then next we can look at the other release date, which was the unemployment. As you can see here in 2021, we had a huge spike. This is the COVID unemployment rate, which hit almost 15% back then. Since then, everything's kind of been on a downtrend and things have been stabilizing. And if we zoom in a little bit more, the data, as you can see now, actually been taken up, which is, it's very unfortunate. People in unemployment rate is going up and people are kind of losing their jobs and looking for unemployment. It doesn't always necessarily mean that they've lost their jobs. Some also have quit their jobs and just have found alternative ways of working. It could be, like in the non-farm payrolls, we could have, some people leaving corporate and their W-2 jobs and switching over to their own business and being an entrepreneur. And so some of these metrics, that's why it's important to kind of look at the trend and then take it with a grain of salt as well too. But as you can see, the trend has kind of been going up. The latest bottoming was at 3.35% in April of last year. But now we started ascending, and then we're at the 3.9%. Why unemployment is important? It's just because that's what the Fed also is. Their second mandate is, so their number one mandate is inflation and fair prices and keeping inflation under control. The second metric that they use and what they're driven by is unemployment. They also want everybody to, have as much employment as possible, and then keep that unemployment number low. What I've been hearing, what I've been listening is that currently we want the unemployment rate to go up. That kind of gives the Fed, a good reason to start doing rate cuts. Right now, as the unemployment rate is going up, that kind of gives them a front that they are allowed to cut rates since they're seeing a spike in unemployment. And that's historically what we've seen before, is that as unemployment increases, that allows the Fed to kind of pause on the monetary tightening and then adds liquidity into the system, which is really good for just assets overall. So that's a dive into, you know, some of the macroeconomic data and what I do when there are macroeconomic data releases. Just kind of go through the process, look at the trend, and then see how that affects trading and investing. So next, as I mentioned, I actually put on some options trade for CleanSpark and then for RIOT. So I'll take you guys through my whole entire process of going through this and the thought process around this, and then actually have the mechanics and what buttons and all the menus that I'm clicking through, let's say Robinhood, and that's what I use for options. So let's dive in. So I think some of you guys have seen this dashboard already. So this is my macro dashboard. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but this is the first thing I kind of take a look at just to see how everything from a macro perspective is looking. So NASDAQ today, we're at 0.3% uptrend, which is good. Same thing with the QQQ. It's kind of flat, but the current trend is up. So that's also good. VIX right now, it's flat as well too. We had a little bit of a spike right here, but I think that's fine as long as it's not passing this like 15 range, then I think that's good. Looking at the dollar, we're down at 0.5%. It's down on a downtrend, which is good for risk assets. Looking at the bonds right here, both the 2-year and the 10-year are in an uptrend, which means yields are kind of taking a little bit of a breather, and as bonds are appreciating, that's a good for the environment. Looking at gold, it's up 0.32% for futures. It's on a tear right now, and we talked a little bit about all-time highs, which is also good, and a green light that, you know, things are kind of bullish. Looking at oil, it's flat. We had some 13s that hit here, and it's kind of just above this moving average line, which is still bullish for oil. So with oil, you know, as it spikes and we're getting into that kind of reflation Goldilocks zone, increases in oil I think is okay, since, you know, a lot of the inflation the Fed has been fighting has kind of dissipated. And so looking at the overall macro dashboard, give me a green light for, hey, let's take on some risk. So after I took a look at the overall macro environment, what I want to take a look at is Bitcoin. Since the miners are a proxy for Bitcoin, let's just take a look at how Bitcoin is doing right now. Today, it's relatively flat or down 1%. It actually hit a new all-time high, I think, of around like $71,000 today. But now, right now, at the time of recording, it's trading at $66,000 right now. We had these 9 sells right here. So, you know, we could be going down. But again, we took a look at the Bitcoin ETF inflows, and they've been really, really strong. We'll take a look at that next. But from a technical perspective, things are kind of okay. It's not giving me a green light. It's really kind of neutral. RSI is heading down, which means it's losing a little bit of momentum. But again, I'm taking a little bit less emphasis on the technicals and just kind of sticking with the basics of there's a lot of inflows coming in. Nothing really sticks out from me for the daily chart. Again, we had this high wick up here, up to, you know, past 70,000 a little bit. And then it sold off here. Nothing alarming from here. As long as we hold this like 66,000 level and 65,000 level, I think we should be okay. On the weekly chart, nothing crazy. $75,000 is our major target up, and you know, we've gone parabolic, but not necessarily means that it's bearish at all. And so from the technicals of Bitcoin, things look neutral. So not bullish or bearish at all. So the first trade I put on for today was a options trade for CleanSpark. Looking at the daily chart, again, like I said, the main chart that I look at is the daily chart and where I make a lot of decisions. RSI is breaking out of the oversold territory. So that's a bullish sign right now. We also had a 1 sell countdown, which means the general direction is up here. We do have this resistance level, so maybe we're going to take some time to break this, you know, $19, $20 level. But I think as soon as we break out of this, we should have some good upside. I think the next major move up here or resistance is $23. Nothing alarming on the daily or the hourly chart. You know, we had this 9 buy and things are in the general direction of heading up. Some stops I would use is around $14, maybe $12 here as well too. And then another stop I would probably, I think the better one would be this $14 here. So we can use this $14 here as our major stop. And if it breaks below this, we're going to get out of the option. And then weekly, nothing to kind of take a look at from there. And then I'll show you guys the other options trade, which I did, which is on RIOT. But even before I move over to RIOT, I think what I want to use is some upper targets. Lower and upper targets are really important, especially with options trade. What I'm going to do is maybe CleanSpark doesn't have as good DeMark wave projections, and then they don't have good markers since it's relatively new compared to RIOT. I'll show you guys RIOT, which is a little bit more clean, but for CleanSpark here, I'm going to look at this resistance line of probably like this $35-$40 range as my main kind of upper target range for the options. So the other options trade I did was a trade on RIOT. I took RIOT and I bought some more contracts on RIOT just because it was a little bit cheaper. Cheaper doesn't always mean better, but it was a little bit easier. I was able to buy a couple more contracts of RIOT than I was able to for CleanSpark. And then RIOT, as I mentioned, has a little bit of a some cleaner signals and some good upper and lower targets that I can try to hit for this trade. So right now we have a 8 right now for a buy countdown. Front running this a little bit, which is not always good, and so typically you'd want to see these 9s before you buy, but in the next day or two we could see this going up. But I think looking at the RSI, it's starting to bottom out, so I think that's a good time for me to enter. What I'm looking for is some of these upper targets, so I'm looking at, let's see, $23 and then $24.55 as some upper targets for this move up for some resistance here. We could potentially hit this resistance here as well too at 18 bucks, but I'm going to use these further upward targets just because I want to get some leverage. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about what you can do for leverage on options. So looking at this daily or the hourly chart, I'm probably going to use this $11 as a stop, and so if it does crash below $11, I'm going to exit, and then maybe not my full position, but again I have another one here at 10.50, so maybe I can get rid of one contract at $11 and then another contract if it does hit 150. So that's my exit plan. And then looking at the weekly, we went over this a little bit yesterday, but some of these major targets I don't think we're going to reach for another 12 months to 16 months, but I'm really looking at this 128 range. So we do have a lot of room to move here. We do have some resistance here at $20, and then the next major ones are going to be $29 and then $40 as well too. Let's take a look at the charts. The next thing I want to do is review the Longbow dashboard. So next part of me assessing this is looking at the Longbow range and the Longbow dashboard. I don't have it for CleanSpark. I put in a ticket for CleanSpark for Longbow to add it. I don't think they've added it yet, but we do have RIOT as kind of a indicator, and we can use it. So right now it's at the bottom of this range, so I think it's a good buy. Some of these signals are bearish, even though I think that's in the medium term, and I think that's going to make a reversal as it's trying to catch up to what Bitcoin is doing. This is the most important thing I take a look at for options right here. It's neutral. That means that the volatility is flat. So that means for options, the more if it's in greed or fear, it's actually more volatile, and so the cost of that option actually goes up. So when you're looking at this, you really want a neutral setup for this, and that's why I went with the RIOT options versus the CleanSpark. I think the options were a little bit cheaper from a volatility perspective. So again here, maybe I can use some upper targets of $16 that Longbow has, and then another good stop out area is $10.17. So that just gives me a couple of ranges and a couple of things to set up when I'm trying to enter this trade. So I'm going to try to do something a little bit different, you guys, and be 100% transparent with my trades and what I'm doing, and at least my Robinhood and my trading account anyways. I think a lot of people talk about trades and putting on trades, but they really don't show you what they're doing and how they're doing it. And what I want to do is just be transparent as I can, because I learned a lot from watching other people trade and then watching them actually do things. And so I hope that this helps you guys out and gives you guys a little bit of insight into kind of my thinking and then the process for it. So I already put on these trades for CleanSpark and the RIOT. So I bought the CleanSpark 30 calls ending on April 26th. Actually, I made a mistake here, and actually I should have put in a better limit price. So I'm actually down right now 55 bucks or 18% on that option. I also bought so I bought one contract for the CleanSpark one. Again, since it said it was a little bit more expensive. RIOT right now, I bought $23 calls for June, and I have 3 contracts of that, and we're flat right now. We're up a little bit of $3. Again, I have about 249 shares of CleanSpark, and total returns for CleanSpark right now on the common or on the shares is about 400 bucks. So I'll show you guys a little bit. I use Robinhood since it's a little bit easier, and so if I wanted to go buy options, what you can go do is let's take a look at RIOT. Click on RIOT, trade RIOT options, and then they do a good pretty good job at, these are all the different pricings and everything. So as I mentioned, for options, my strategy, and it might be different for people, I don't do very short dated options. I do, the shortest I've done is maybe 2 weeks, just because after 2 weeks, they seem to decay very, very fast. And what you lose a lot of what they call theta decay, and the intrinsic value of the stock option. As it's getting closer to expiration, it loses a lot of its value quickly. So I tend to do the month to, 2 months to 3 months, 6 months. And I even have like year or 2 year contracts as well too. And that's my kind of bread and butter. But for this one, for RIOT, you can go into buy. As we mentioned, I want to go out as far as I can and give myself a little bit of buffer. And I think for RIOT, the next or the furthest away was June. And so I selected June for my date. And this kind of varies. It depends, how much confidence or how much you can think that price is going to hit by that date. I think that RIOT and everything can move maybe within the next couple of months and hit there, but I'm not going to buy for 1 week or 2 weeks, since I'm not really sure of that time frame and not very confident. So here you just kind of scroll up to, we use that upper target of 23 bucks right here. I thought it was a good, price. What you can do here is kind of change some of this around, or if you have less money or you want to put less money into this, you can use different ways. You can either change the date, you can make it closer, and that will make the contracts cheaper, but that adds more risk. You can also put further out, and as you can see, as you go out, it's less likely to hit these prices, and that's why these options are cheap. But sometimes these out of the money options are really good, and this is a form of leverage right here, is out of the money options. The further you go out of money, the more leverage you get, and the more leverage just indicates more risk, because the prices might not be very applicable, and then or it might be very hard to reach that price level. And then so that's one form of how you can leverage or make more money out of a option. And then to basically to buy an option, all you do is click this add button and then continue. Here I think Robinhood does a good projection. Again, this is just a projection, it's going to change on the volatility, but if we buy this option, we'll lose our maximum, which is $140. And most of the time, and that gives you your defined risk right there. You're okay with losing 140 bucks. And if, RIOT hits 25, 30 bucks, you'll be making $200, $300, $400. And if it reaches, 30 bucks by that time frame, you'll make about $600. So right now, I think that's a good risk to reward. So you're losing 2 to make, let's say, 6 at the most. And so we'll keep an eye on this right here. You can also put in contracts. So how many contracts you want, one, and then this is where I messed up on CleanSpark. I should have put a better limit price. So you can see here, the bid is what the lowest price somebody is asking for it. The market is right in the middle of those two, and the ask is what somebody is wanting to that. And if you buy a market order, that's what it's probably going to be filling at. So options do swing around, and if you have time and you have patience, I generally put in a limit price, and then, or if you want a likely fill, maybe put in the middle of the mark. Again, if you put it lower on into this bid, it's less likely to fill and you're less likely to get the option. If you do the ask, you're overpaying for it, and you could be in a little bit of a loss already when you start the position, but just something to play around with. And I always suggest, if you have time, maybe you could put in a limit of, how much you want. So each of this, it's in dollar terms, and it's multiplied by 100. So that's why you see $1.38. Actually, the whole entire contract is going to be 1 times 100, which is 100 shares, which is what the contract allows you to buy or sell. And then that's why each contract, when you multiply 1 times 138, equals $138. So I did the same process there for CleanSpark, and then 6. Again, this one's probably much riskier, and is at $30. Since these contracts are really expensive, I didn't have enough buying power to purchase, calls all the way out to June for CleanSpark. If I did, I would have done that. So a couple of things you can play around with is expiration date. So to make contracts cheaper, you can choose a shorter date. Again, just more risk the shorter the date you choose. And then another thing you can use is using out of the money call, or further out of the money, which is basically further away from what the current price is trading at. And you can use that as leverage, and to also make contracts a little bit cheaper as well too. So give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of, how I do and how I trade options. And we'll keep a track on this. And what I'll do is I'll actually keep an eye on this, and I want to actually use this account with you guys as well too, to trade, and then to see what we can do with this account. We'll go through our ups and downs with this, and you guys can kind of see, how we do and how well we don't do as well too. So hope you guys enjoyed this. A little bit of a longer one today, but hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll catch you guys next time.